Ms. Rama Bijapurkar, the author at Lilliput Land, How Small is Driving India's Mega Consumption Stories, joining us on the show. Of course, she's been a close watcher of the entire consumption trends of the country for a long time and has been advising a lot of companies as to how they should move forward in this environment. Rama, hi, good to be speaking with you. Thanks so much for making time for us. What do you make of the current trend? The rural recovery being slower than anticipated, and now urban is also causing problems with the growth rate moderating. Rama, I think you are on mute. Maybe we'll just request you to unmute.
Yeah,
Yes,
sorry.
please go
Thank you for
ahead.
having me here. I said, as you know, I'm not a great fan of QSQT quarter se quarter tak. So it's relative. It is true that the richer part of India, the top 20%, the T20 as I call it, are actually doing very well. All this talk of premiumization basically means companies are saying we want richer consumers who will buy more higher price performance point things. But I think Indian consumption per se is healthy. It is a question of whose aspirations and which stage the company is at. It is true that if you're a huge giant, the early bird does get the worm a little bit because you already have had all the penetration that you need and you are coming off a large base. So I would say watch the space and no need to panic. But yes, middle India, as long as inflation continues, will be under stress, particularly because income surpluses are not that much. So if tomatoes go to 120 rupees and school fees go up and bus fares go up, you will have people choosing what they want to buy. And maybe shampoos and toilet soaps will get the short shrift in favor of secondhand smartphones.
A very good morning to you, Ms. Bijapurkar. There's Cheryl also joining the conversation. And let's just put the spotlight then, especially on the small consumption in India. If you could explain to us what are the key drivers behind this growing demand for small consumption in India, as you've actually highlighted in your book as well.
Yeah, I think consumers have one religion, and that's the value religion. They will buy whatever gives them incremental, better benefit minus cost, the way they think about value. So it's not that there is demand for small, it is just that as many big companies in India, as you know, don't really like the mass market, don't really like the small market, with the exception of a handful or even less, the HOLs, the ITCs, Airtel, Jio, and so on and so forth. You can count them on the fingers of your hand. And so as a result, they've created the space for smaller companies. Earlier, we used to dismiss them as unorganized sector and say, oh, we're not competing with them. But I think unorganized is not disorganized. And over time, I think the smaller, local, regional brands across all categories have started getting their act together, doing well. They're agile, they're nimble. You go to any small town and you will actually see fairly interesting things that you will not see in big companies. For example, there is also more food excitement on the street than there is in the big processed food market. So I think small in India is getting smarter, is smart, and is a lot of it is regional. And I think they are giving big companies a run for their money. That's because mass markets like Time and Tide don't wait for anybody. So while big companies wait for small or modest income consumers to get richer, I think the smaller suppliers are saying, this is good, let's cater to them. So that is really the dynamic of why small is really doing so well.
But how can one not talk about what exactly is happening in this entire space when you talk about Kirana versus e-commerce versus quick commerce? That space is pretty exciting. Every time you're seeing that, okay, now will it be able to get in more players? You see, in fact, much more, twice the amount of players actually entering that space. Every company is actually trying to get a grab of that market share. But how are you viewing this entire trend of Kirana versus e-commerce versus quick commerce? How is it playing out?
You know, what I love about consumer India and about India in general is that we find new ways of doing old things. So it is a tremendous back to the future. I'm old enough to remember the days when Chotu or Ramu of my neighborhood Kirana would rush me whatever I needed when I needed it. Over time, the nearby Kirana is not so nearby. Chotu is not as available and has been replaced by an app. So yes, there are some shifts in consumer behavior, as in when my cook comes home and says, "Kya khane ka man hai?" I will ask her what's in the fridge. In the Gen Next, I'm often told by my daughter and her friends that they will think about what they want and then start buying ground up at that moment. But other than that, I think it is the chotu and the kirana and the instant delivery that is being replaced now in a different way. But I also want to tell you that yesterday I used quick commerce app to buy multigrain bread or to try. 45 rupees was the cost, 116.98 was what I had to pay. Small cart fees, handling fees, platform fees, delivery fees. And then they said to me that the saving was 13.02. And I said, if it costs 45 and I'm paying 117, how am I saving 13.02? So I asked my friends at Bizom Market Intelligence, I said, explain the arithmetic to me. And they did explain the arithmetic. I can't say I understood it. I also bought Fevikwik at 71 rupees cost, and I paid 126. In the case of Fevikwik, I needed it desperately. I'd broken a favorite something. In the case of bread, I didn't need it desperately. I waited for someone to go down and get it for me. So to say that it's annihilation of the kiranas is only one way to do things. I think consumers process value, and yes, if you're getting everything that the kirana is giving you and more with a better assortment within a short period of time, what's not to like? As long as you're not charging small cart fees and handling fees and platform fees and delivery fees, at which point people will make choices. So I think yes, the kirana is in trouble, but the kirana has been in trouble for a while because in a lot of new settlements, for example, you don't have space for kiranas. Powai doesn't have it, Gurgaon doesn't have it. I mean, they're very few and far between. Even in South Bombay, where I live, the kirana is retreating further and further away from my home. So I think quick commerce is kirana plus, the way I see it, with a much more interesting assortment. They understand party time, ice cubes. They understand. So earlier, if I ran out of sodas when I had a visitor at home, I would have to send someone. Now I just Zepto it in or Blink it in or whatever, and so it will go the distance it will go. I think it will eat a little bit of the kirana's lunch, but it depends on what price points they're going to sustain it at.
The next question, given the fact that, yes, especially do you think this sort of a trend would prevail primarily in the metro cities, but it'll be difficult to penetrate to the tier 2, tier 3 cities? Because like you said, that when you are ordering from any of the quick commerce platforms, you have to pay the small cart fees, you have to pay the delivery charges if you are not actually buying the minimum amount that they're asking for. When you go to tier 2, tier 3 cities, I don't think that they would go ahead and want to pay that much for that delivery cost, isn't it?
Well, hey, this is the way consumers process it. If in the small town, if whatever I want, it could be a stick of instant glue, it could be, I don't know, crayons and paints for my child that needs to go to school tomorrow. And if the cost of transport to get to the city center and get the auto rickshaw and bring it back is going to be just marginally less than the platform fee and the delivery charge, I will do it. So so small towns also have a different kind of cost structure to where you go and what you get and just the availability. So if it is wait till day after tomorrow and Papa goes to town and he will get it for you, or when I go to a big shop and I will get it for you and the child is wailing and saying I need it tomorrow, it will work in small towns. In fact, it will work in rural India even more interestingly, except that you're never going to be able to get the 10-minute delivery going there because you need a certain concentration of demand. So what I find interesting is that we missed the modern trade era didn't do so well for us, but from Kirana we're leapfrogging to Kirana Plus, and it's an interesting model where you may see a lot of these local apps showing up over time in localized areas. That's the way it could go as well, because the model works.
Absolutely, like you said, the model works. You may at least see some other players actually emerging in these smaller towns. But let's talk about the FMCG sector and the companies and the volume growth outlook. How are you witnessing it actually going ahead? Because if you see the Q2 has not been that great, and you did say that you don't look at the segment as quarter tak, but otherwise, how is the FMCG sector and the volume growth looking like for them, given the fact that we are seeing some commodity inflation still persisting?
So the street I live on is very, very far, I think, from the street that all of you live on. And the other thing I have been saying for a while is that the top lines of companies don't necessarily reflect consumer demand. So, for example, I think we are not factoring in what is happening to small supplier consumption, which is doing quite well. So if you ask me where will big companies go, I don't know. But if you ask me, is there enough consumer demand? I think consumer demand is fine. Will small companies, the minute big companies keep saying, I will premiumize, 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 they're saying that I will vacate the mass market, right? I will go to where people have more money to buy higher value products, and that's the game I'm going to play. If that is the business market game, then you start looking at value growth. Why are you so obsessed with volume growth on that count? Because when I hear premiumization, I'm hearing I will sell higher priced, higher benefit products to richer people. And I think then you should have an appropriate metric on that. The second is that I believe intercategory competition is severe. So, and I do believe that times are a bit stressed, not just on the supply side, but as far as consumer incomes are concerned, because incomes will happen when investment happens, when the economy hums, and all that stuff, the good stuff we've been through. So, in that context, people are going to choose, and they are going to choose between, as I said, the secondhand smartphone, a little more Ola when I take my family out, versus FMCG. And we've seen this before in the past that if you remember the time when there was a credit boom, about maybe 20, 25 years ago, and everybody started having EMIs. FMCG consumption was a little bit the residual after I paid my EMIs, after I've done all those things. So intercategory competition is severe. If you have a lot of people who are going to be traveling during Christmas time and New Year time, and we have become a holiday season country in many ways, the Diwali season, the New Year season, then that money is going to come out of some other pocket because the incomes are not growing as fast as desire is. So I think FMCG companies will, and again, it's not the industry. I think we forget individual company strategies and choices they make. So I would say forget the sector, look at the individuals and go with that.
Right, absolutely. Point taken. Thank you so much, Mr. Bijapurkar, for joining us on the show to talk about exactly the trend that is at play when you talk about the entire consumption space, the FMCG space, the Kirana versus e-commerce versus quick commerce. That one is a space that you cannot actually overlook at this point in time. But if
you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.